everyone, I'm Allison, and today I want to talk to you about my recently completed Hello from My Colors crop by Jessie Maed. This was my biggest color work project by far, and I thought that it deserved its own video because I'm obsessed with it. So let's dive into the pattern details first. So this is a pattern by Jessie Maed Designs, or Jessie Maed. She's one of those designers that I follow on Instagram where I'm like, every single thing that you do is absolutely perfect. And when she started teasing this design, I was like, immediately, I have to knit this. I'm like, I will knit this starting the day that it releases. And that's kind of exactly what I did. But I did have a couple of hiccups along the way. We'll get to it, but I want to start talking about the actual pattern details for clarity's sake. So this sweater is an all-over color work sweater. It was designed in Brooklyn Tweed Peary yarn, but I knit it almost exclusively in Knit Picks palette yarn, which is another of the recommended yarns. It is knit in fingering weight yarn, but it's not knit on the tiniest needles. So the smallest is the US size 4 3.5 millimeter needles, and the largest is US size 6 4mm needles. It's available in a bunch of different sizes from extra small to a 5X, and it's to fit the smallest end of chest measurement of 28 inches or 71 centimeters. The largest size is 60 inches or 152 centimeters. This sweater is knit from the top down. It is a circular yoke, and it starts off with a rolled neckline, and it has short row shaping. So it is going to do a little bit of the more complicated stuff at first, especially with doing a ton of increases, but it is kind of smooth sailing from there. All of the motifs are pretty easy to memorize. Some of the slightly more complicated ones, like these ones, I did have to reference the pattern a little bit more, but for the most part, it's the kind of patterns where you can look at your previous row of knitting and know what your current row needs to do. This pattern released in early to mid-October, and I cast it on immediately. Let me start off with the various yarns that I use. So I think this pattern only calls for 5 different colors, and I use 10. But let's dig into it. All of this is in no particular order, but this main kind of creamy color that I have as the background throughout most of the sweater is Cloudborn Fibers Highland fingering yarn in Taupe Heather. And for this pattern, I used 83 grams of 100 gram skein. All of the rest of the yarns in no particular order are Knit Picks palette yarn in the following colors. We had Hare Heather, and I used 15 grams. Brass Heather, I used 13 grams. Almond, I used 34 grams. Turmeric, I used 25 grams. Tea Rose, I used 27 grams. Mongoose, I used only 1 gram. Brindle Heather, I used 24 grams. Masala, I used 23 grams. And then the last of the contrasting colors was Cloudborn Alpaca and Highland Naturals. That was in the shade Camel Heather, and I used 27 grams. So we got a lot going on there. There were so many ends to weave in, but that's okay. It was worth it. I highly recommend weaving in your ends as you go. That's what I did. That way on the final day, I only had half of the ends of one arm to weave in, not the entire sweater's worth, so it was absolutely worth it. So let's cover modifications because I've got 2, fairly big ones. This pattern was written to have cap sleeves. So essentially when you finish the yoke, you just do a very small amount of work on the arms and then it's done. However, I knew that for me, living in a warmer climate in Louisiana, I was never going to wear a full colorwork sweater during the summer months when I would want to have no sleeves. And then once we get into late autumn and into the winter, I'm gonna want sleeves. I would be too cold if I didn't have sleeves on. So therefore, I knit sleeves onto this sweater. In the pattern, Jessie does give you kind of loose instructions on how to do sleeves, but she notes that they haven't been tested by her test knitters. However, it's also kind of foolproof so long as you don't do any shaping of the arms, and that's kind of what she gives you anyway. So what I did is I just picked up all of the stitches for the sleeves that were given, picked up under the arm where you have to anyway, and I just knit a straight tube down following the same chart as the body, and then I started repeating it as well. That way the sleeves of this sweater would end up being a little bit longer than the body of the sweater. I had intended them to be more like bracelet length sleeves, but then when I blocked it, I could not like smush them back up. So they kind of just hit the wrist, making them a little bit longer than I wanted them to be, but that's all right. I had two other modifications to the sweater that are a little bit like lower key than like full on adding sleeves. So the first modification is that I chose to do folded cuffs instead of doing ribbed cuffs for both the sleeves and the body. The reason that I had done this is because I noticed that in some other people's projects and even in my own, the bottom of the sweater was rolling a lot, like so much. So in my mind, I was like, oh, well, a double folded hem, that's gonna be heavier, it's gonna hold the sweater down. It absolutely did not do that. It still flipped, and actually it kind of flipped worse at like the line of where you sew the two pieces together, because it gave it like a point to flip at. So that was a little bit of a learning experience, but I don't necessarily know if it would have been any better if I had done ribbing instead. So essentially what I learned, I did do the cuff on the body a couple of times because I learned you have to decrease the number of stitches when you're doing a folded hem so it doesn't flare out and it doesn't flip up as easily. So I ended up decreasing the number of stitches by a little bit more than 10% on the body and on the sleeves so that it would fix that flipping hem issue, and then I still had to block it into place because the body in particular still really wanted to flip up at that sewn line. However, the sleeves never did that. Subbing in a folded hem is super easy. Instead of doing the ribbing, you just knit flat in whatever color you'd like. When it's gotten about as long as you would like for it to be, you do a roll of purls, and that just gives you a really nice folding edge. Like it naturally just wants to fold to that spot. And then you keep knitting flat and stockinette, and you just sew it up on the inside, and it creates a really nice finished edge, and I think it looks really good. I think it's kind of, honestly, I like how it looks better than ribbing, and it's easier to do. You're hardly doing any purling, and it's absolutely worth the effort to sew it together. And then the last modification is I did add my own colorwork motif to both the body and the arms. So all of these colorwork patterns are from the pattern, except for this one, this last one here. It's also the same here, and it's on the body as well. So there's kind of two reasons why I added in this second colorwork motif. Actually, it might be more like 3 reasons, but as I was working on the body, I kind of knew that I wanted it to be a little bit longer than what it was written for, but she does give modifications on how to lengthen it that I didn't particularly like. So instead of lengthening the individual sections of the body to make the overall body longer, I just added in a new section so that they were still around the same length and kind of fit better with the width of all of the other sections on the sweater so far. The second reason is that I really liked these more geometric patterns, and I wanted to make sure that that was still held throughout the arms and was incorporated on the body as well instead of just being in the yoke. Because this particular colorwork section was not included in the pattern, I'll just pop up an image of what I did right here. You can use it if you would like to, if not, go right ahead. But that is what I did to add another of these kind of geometric patterns into the arms and body. Now, getting into the nitty-gritty of me actually completing this sweater. So I started the sweater, I think the day that the pattern was released. I had ordered yarn in advance to make it. And the whole idea behind the Hello from My Colors crop is to do it in your colors. But my colors, the colors that I gravitate towards the most, are definitely more like springy and summery. And like I said, I knew I was not going to be wearing this sweater during the spring and summer because like colorwork is more heavy than just a flat plain stockinette sweater because it's, you know, it's essentially yarn held double in most or all of the pattern. And because of that, I knew I didn't want to do like my colors, but I wanted to do an autumnal take on my colors. So I really gravitate towards pinks and reds and orange and yellow and kind of bright versions of all of those colors. And actually my colors are not all that far off from the example that she had done in her colors. But to do a more autumnal version, I definitely needed to order like the background color. That was the first yarn that I ordered, and that's the Cloudborn Highland fingering yarn. And I picked through some of the yarns in my stash to put together a pattern that I thought would work for me. And I got started on knitting it, and I had even I knit my swatch. I had doodled out like the color work with the actual colors, like I pulled the colors from an image. And as I actually started knitting it, it was not working for me. So I had knit a couple of sections into the yoke and immediately was like, this is not it. These colors are not working how I thought that they were gonna look. And it was just, it kind of mismatchy in not a cute way. So then I ordered a ton of Knit Picks palette yarn because it is extremely budget friendly, and I knew eventually I would use these colors for something or other. And that's what got us to this point. So it's kind of like my colors with the oranges and the golds and the pinks, but a more toned down, a little bit more like moody and autumnal, and kind of like a little bit of a 70s vibe, which I really like. So I mentioned I did do a gauge swatch, and I believe I got gauge on the gauge swatch, but I can double check that. However, as I was knitting it, I was definitely loosening up, like kind of a lot. So my finished measurements are definitely larger than the size that I knit, if that makes sense. So I think I knit a size large. I wish that I had not knit a large, that I knit a medium instead, because I do have quite a lot of positive ease. However, it sits in a really nice way. I have a couple of other sweaters that I knit that have a lot of positive ease that aren't very drapey. So the finished garment just looks like you knit something that's just too big for you. Well, it's the next day now. There were some technical difficulties, but let's wrap up. So although this sweater ended up a little bit bigger than I had intended for it to be, I still think that it fits really nicely. Like the drape is really nice. I think it turned out like a very comfortable fit. I wouldn't want personally for this sweater to have negative ease. I have seen some people do that and I think it looks really nice. But just for me, I don't think that I would enjoy that quite as much. And not because this yarn ended up being itchy, it's surprisingly not itchy. It certainly feels like wool, but it doesn't feel like, I don't know, it's not making my skin itch. So that's really nice and kind of slightly unexpected from that Knit Picks yarn. It doesn't look like when you just have the ball, it doesn't look like it's going to be super soft, but it is very comfortably next to skin soft for me. If I were to knit the sweater again, I would definitely knit it in a medium just because my gauge is ending up a little bit looser than I had intended it to be, and so that I don't have quite so much positive ease. I also think that if I were to knit this again, I would just omit all of the color work. I like the shape of this design a lot. I really like the neckline. I like the drape of how the body fits. And I think it would be nice to have just kind of a plain version, and it would also be a lot quicker and easier. Although this sweater did knit up pretty quickly, although I focused on it pretty exclusively, but I knit it in I think just over a month, which is very fast for me personally. I really like this sweater because I feel like you can dress it up in a lot of different ways. So I feel like it would look really cute on top of a silky skirt, a long silky skirt for a holiday, or I'm obviously wearing it with my pink jeans. It looks cute with blue jeans. I feel like it would look cute with overalls. There's just a lot of ways that you can style this and have it look really nice. So as I was knitting this sweater, I was trying to take some videos of my process through it. So I will insert those at the end so you get the whole experience of knitting the sweater with me. But that's all I have to share with you today, so please let me know in the comments if you are planning on knitting the sweater yourself, or if you already have knit it, or if you're working on it. I would love to see pictures, and I will see you next time. Bye. I'm having a real Instagram versus reality moment here because I just posted a very cute picture / video of myself from this weekend where I was all dressed up and I was wearing a sweater wrap thing and I was all dressed up for a wedding, and here I am in reality with no makeup on, and I haven't washed my hair in a couple of days, and it is what it is. But it is the end of the day on Friday, October 1st. I spent literally my entire day today, literally my entire day today writing reports, because the first of the month, or whatever the first working day of the month, is always monthly reports day for my job. So finally finished all of that. I need to pick up my office because it is a complete and total disaster, but I'm very excited because the Hello from My Colors crop top released today. I got the pattern, I have my yarn, I have it already wound up, so I'm excited to cast that on like immediately. I wasn't joking about my desk being a mess, but we have my colors here. And if you're thinking to yourself, these do not look like Allison's colors, it's because they're kind of not, but I think that this is going to be a very wearable palette, so that I'll get the most use out of my sweater. Typically, I do like things that are a little bit more colorful, and actually the the promo picture that they're using for this sweater is very much like my colors, but it's very summery, and a lot of my colors are very summery that I like. A lot of the colors that I like are very summery, but I also live in a really warm location. There's absolutely no way that I actually could wear this sweater. Definitely wouldn't be able to actually wear this sweater during the summer, so I decided to go for a very toned down, like autumnal kind of tonal look, because I really like that vibe, even though it's not like my colors, which is the point, but whatever, it's okay, it doesn't matter. A very good example of this is my crappy report writing day outfit, where I had my quilt coat on this morning, a super comfy orange shirt, purple leggings, purple socks. There's my cat. This is kind of an example of like choosing my colors, this blanket that between myself and my mom made many years ago. And I chose all these colors when I was probably in high school. And I think it kind of looks like a train wreck. So that's why I'm not doing that for this sweater, and instead I'm doing the sweater color choosing based on what I think is actually going to look good, rather than what like my colors are. So you might be asking yourself, Allison, you have a million different fingering weight sock yarns in all these bright fun colors, and you know, less fun, less bright colors down here. Why don't you use any of those? I'm not using any of like the gazillion sock yarns that I have, because basically all of them are superwash or superwash and nylon. I literally only have one that is no superwash, no nylon, which is in this sock bag right here from Neighborhood Fiber Company. It's really cute, but obviously not enough just like on hand to make this sweater. So I am knitting this up in Cloudborn fibers. I'll put the details in my project, and I'll put the details down below, but some of the yarns are 50-50 wool and alpaca, the other yarn is just 100% wool, and they're all fingering weight, and I think it's gonna work. So as I said, quite a subdued color palette besides this one. This one is actually Knit Picks palette yarn in Peony, and this is left over from my Wrap Me Up sweater scarf. So I really like that color, and that's kind of the pop-up color, and the rest of these are all like quite neutrally brown. So I have, this is 100% wool, and all of the rest of these are the 50% alpaca, 50% wool. I think these will work out okay. And I'm excited to get started. I have enough of both this color and of this color to have either one of these be the main color, but I think I'm going to go with the lighter color just because I think I'll like it more, rather than having the overall tone be a little bit darker. I also need to find my needles, because this uses a couple of different needle sizes, and I'm pretty sure that all of the size of needles that are called for are currently being used on other projects. So I'm gonna have to go take a look and see where my needles are at before even counting before even casting on. Well, some time has passed. I basically got started, got really excited, got everything like swatched out with the yarn that I intended to use, and started on the actual sweater and immediately knew that it was not gonna work. I like sketched out, like color matched with my actual yarns, doodled it out on my iPad like with the pattern, how it would look, and actually started knitting it and immediately hated all of the colors together. Oh well. I guess it happens, but I ripped back to the very beginning of the color work. This is the first section. I'll show it in a second. And yeah, did a little bit of an order on Knit Picks to get some of the palette yarn, which is a quite budget-friendly 100% non-superwash wool, to make the whole sweater much more warm-toned, which I think I'm going to like a lot more. So this is how far I ripped back. I had done a couple of these sections of color work and basically was like, none of these colors are gonna work for me. Hate it, can't do it. So ripped it back to a point where I was happy with these two colors and did a little bit of shopping. So I have new colors to explore. I will put all of the names down below because I don't remember off the top of my head this one or the brown, but I have obviously the labels on the new choices. So we have Knit Picks palette in Brindle Heather, which is this gorgeous, like extremely warm toned brown, which I'm really like very into at the moment, and it has lots of different tones to the yarn throughout. A lot of these are heathers, I believe. This one is Brass Heather. And again, extremely warm toned, has a little bit of like orange throughout, but it's very much like a gold color. Let's see, this is Jackie. What you doing? Oh boy. Okay, now that he's happy, this is Tea Rose, which is a little bit different than the pink I had previously had. Hold on. Jackie's very demanding at getting his window opened here so that he can see outside. So this color pink here is, I believe it's Peony from Knit Picks, and I thought it was just a little bit too bright. So this is a bit more of a toned down version. Then we have like a yellow. This is Turmeric. Getting close here. This is the brown from before. Again, oh, actually I do have the labels. So this is Cloudborn Fibers, Alpaca, Highland, and Camel Heather. And then this one is Cloudborn Fibers, 100% Highland wool in Taupe Heather. Alright, and then last of the new colors is this very like dark pumpkin-y orange called Masala. So these tones I thought would work a lot better for like the much more warm-toned and autumnal look that I'm going for. I actually had a couple of other options, and now that I'm looking at it, I might choose between these two, choose one or the other, because I have more than I need, and get started again with doodling out the color placement to make sure that I'm actually happy with how that's going to look. So I am somewhat torn at the moment because I have like, I think 6 or 7 options here. I think you only need 5 total colors for the pattern technically, but I really have like, I want it to look quite, not mismatched, but I want it to be extremely tonal. Like the whole vibe is just like very rich and autumnal, but also not super repetitive. So I think I might actually introduce a couple of odds and ends throughout this to kind of shake up the color scheme slightly so that I'm not using all of the same colors over and over again. But I think I'm gonna also kind of play it by ear as I'm going, because there's some of these colors that I think would look really terrible next to each other. Ooh, can I? No. So some of these colors I don't think would look really nice in combination with each other, and if the pattern like called for that number to be knit together, you know what I mean, like CC3 plus CC4 for this particular motif, and I hate those two colors together, and then I'm not gonna do it. I apologize for the kind of raking light here, but gotta deal with what we have during the winter. But like, for example, these two together, gorgeous. These two together, also gorgeous. But like these two together, I don't know. And same with like these two, I think could actually look quite nice together, but then that band would be really red and everything else is kind of brown and orangey, so I want to kind of avoid having like one weird pink strip, so I probably won't match those two up, and I'll keep, you know, a pink with a brown and a red with an orange, and we'll just kind of go with there. But I am actually pretty excited to be able to work on this again, because it's been kind of a while. Like, I feel like it's been a week and a half since I got started on this sweater project, because our mail has been quite slow lately, and I think a lot of people's mail has been slow lately. I feel like usually Knit Picks shipping is pretty quick, but our post office is our post office itself is slowing down. So now that I have more color options and I know kind of more like what I'm going to do, I think my goal is going to be to get this done kind of by Thanksgiving. Hopefully it'll be cool enough to wear that, because I think it's like 90 degrees again today. And we'll go from there. The other thing I forgot to mention is I'm using a cord that is either too long or too short. I think it will be fine once I get to the body, but essentially I just don't have a cord that's quite the right length at the moment. So what I've been doing is just like a really goofy kind of magic loop where I'll just pull out the cord, create a loop on the other end, knit for a while, move the loop somewhere else. It's not the most perfect solution, but you know what, it works. All right, so I am almost done with the yoke of my Hello from My Colors crop, and I just popped my sweater in progress onto a longer needle so that I can try it on. But I just wanted to like intro this because I'm gonna have to try it on in the bathroom, because I don't know if you can tell, it's kind of a dark day, and also like so I can see it in the mirror in the bathroom is the only place where I can do both with somewhat decent lighting, so we'll just cut to that. All right, so this is what we have so far. I have one more section to do on the yoke, so it'll be a slightly thicker section, so maybe 1.5 inches longer, but I thought I would try it on. So I just extended the cable a little bit, obviously needle on one end. This is just the extension cable, and yeah, let's try her on. Not too shabby, if I say so myself. I think the increases are working. It's not making anything like puffy. I just did the last increases for the yoke, so this is as wide as the yoke's gonna get, which I think is gonna be perfect because it's not like too big. Sorry, you can't see my face. Not too big, but still not like tight. And I think the color work lays really nicely. So yeah, not too shabby. So just one more section. It's gonna be kind of a more detailed section like this, and it's gonna be in this darker brown color. And I might be able to split for the sleeves today, maybe. We'll see.
Oh, Jackie.
Apologies for it being kind of dark in here, but I finally finished the sleeve, and I decreased just a little bit in the orange stripe before the edge, and then I did on the second edge of the cuff. So you can kind of see some of the decreases here. I'm hoping that that kind of evens out a little bit with blocking. However, it sits super nicely. it's not rolling at all, and that was an issue that I was having with the bottom hem, so I ripped out the bottom hem. I went ahead and already did a round of decreases, so it's a little bit more than 10% off of the original stitch count of the body for the hem now. So I'm gonna keep going ahead and knitting up the rest of the hem. I might do what I did here because I'm running very close on running out of this particular color. So what I did on this one is I knit the inside in a different color, and I actually don't hate how that looks. So I might go ahead and do the same thing because I do need to use this same color yarn on the next sleeve because I haven't finished both sleeves yet. I'll use it here and then I'll use it again on the next cuff. I have very little left in the actual ball, so I think what I'm going to do is just sub out the inside again to a different color. I probably will use the same gray just so they all match, and go from there and just save some of this kind of tan color yarn that I need for the second sleeve. I will say that the sleeves are pretty beefy, and I know that my gauge was pretty loose. I did some decreases in this kind of yellowy orange color, thinking that it would cinch it down quite a bit more than it did. But it doesn't really seem to have done that at all. Like, you can see a tiny bit here where it's kind of angling up, but it is not at all like cinched in, which I think is a good thing because I'm doing 3/4 length sleeves, and I feel like having it really cinched in, not only would you start to lose this last pattern section, but also then it just looks like you knit bishop sleeves and they're not quite long enough. I guess we'll just take a little break on working on this hem part too, because someone needs to have a little sit and knead. Remember when I ripped back and reknit this entire hem to stop it from flipping? Yeah, that didn't work. It is a little bit better though. It is a little bit better though. So the body used to, like, you know, it's straight, come to here, and then the hem kind of was like this. Like, it was like definitely not the same as the body. So now it's definitely sitting in a straighter line. So I am happy about that, and I'm hoping that the flippiness will block out. We can all ignore the early morning face and bad lighting, but I figured we would do a blocking before and after. So you can see this is obviously not blocked yet. It's very like wobbly looking, especially like in between different color sections, right? Like, my tension's not terrible, but it's not super even either. And the hem is still flipping, even though I undid it and redid it to get it with fewer stitches, but whatever. So it's still flipping. Hopefully that will be taken care of with blocking. If not, then I'll just reknit it for the third time. But this is before pre-blocking.